Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. We'll call to order November 30th Select Board meeting to order. There's no changes to the agenda that I'm aware of. Announcements, Libby?
This meeting is being video and audio recorded. We are having a online public information forum for our Surfside Water Main Extension Project and Surfside Area Roadway and Side Path projects. This is going to be held Thursday, December 8th, starting at 5:30 till 7. Oh, it's here, sorry, and remote. Remote participation link can be found on this agenda here and also on the town website. We have the review of reading of the names of applications for appointments to 3 committees. We have the Zoning Board of Appeals. There is 1 seat and 1 applicant, John Brescher. Harbor Plan Update Committee, there are 2 at-large seats and 5 applicants, Phil Smith, Stephen Lineback, Karen Beatty, Emily Molden, and Emily Kilbert. We have 2 seats available on the Agricultural Commission, no applicants currently, and 2 seats on the Tree Advisory Committee with 1 applicant, Judy Deutsch. That's it for announcements. Other than next week at your meeting, applicants can introduce themselves and you will be making appointments to those groups.
Thank you, Libby. We're on to Select Board announcements and comments. At the beginning, I had one thing to talk about. Just want to say, send our sympathies to the Toole family, the passing of Ed Toole. He was on ZBA over 25 years and really involved in the community. And I think he's going to be very missed. And I only have nothing but very fond and fun memories of Ed. So let's have a moment of silence. Thank you. Any other comments tonight? Start off. Brooke?
I just want to say it's so delightful to see the progress on sidewalks and stuff that goes on here in the off season, the getting things neatened up, cleaned up, progress being made around town. And I also appreciate the DPW for the Christmas trees and starting to see the kids all over town decorating their trees for stroll. It's awesome.
Thank you, Brooke. Anyone else?
I just have one comment. I'm not sure where this goes in the agenda, but I just want to follow up. I hate to bring up bad tidings from the past, but we talked about getting a consultant or someone to look at Plus and digging through everything. That we did have a consultant in 2019 that did a report. I was wondering if we ever looked at that or reviewed it.
First off, I thought the consultant was going to be focusing on the HDC.
Yeah.
That was the discussion that I recall last week. Secondly, I'm not sure what report from 2019 that you are referring to. In 2018, we did a staffing study townwide.
There was a Novak study. It's on the town website from 2019. Talks about Plus, but they do mention the HDC in there.
My recollection is that that's the staffing study, and there was a section about Plus in there. I certainly can go back and double check that, but there were some staffing recommendations in there, which I believe are primarily achieved.
Well, maybe we can talk offline.
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I think there were some operational, there were suggestions in operational, and there was a difference between the initial and the final reports. You know, we saw both copies, and so some of that, there was some other stuff going, that was there as well. So, I think I haven't read it in a while. I'd have to go back and look at it.
But if you look at it, there are, in the draft and in the final, there are recommendations about how HDC operated. So I don't think we should ignore that, at least look at it again. before we go out hiring another consultant, because the work may have been done.
I should mention, and I can send this around, that Stephen Welch shared with me that the HDC adopted some best practices and meeting policies at their meeting before Thanksgiving. So I think that they're being proactive, and I'll make sure that gets circulated.
And
to
I just,
everybody.
I just recommend we all go back and look at those reports and see what has been done or what recommendations have been followed through. There are some comments about the efficiency of the HDC, and particularly about not having absolutely everything going to the full committee and the ability to delegate to the staff, which I think is a lot of the issues we were talking about.
Okay, look into that. Thank you, Malcolm. Any other comments? Okay, moving on. Follow-up comments from prior select board meetings. The public comment follow-up from November 16th. This is regarding SCPF, notice of intent, erosion control project, and sand. Vince is going to answer some of that. The comments were sent to Ms. Perry, who initiated it during public comment during November 16th. She was sent by that email, but Vince is going to walk us through it so everybody can hear.
Thank you very much. There's two parts to it. I'm just going to do the first part first and then stop a few questions before I get onto the other part for the NOI. So the sediment the sediment nourishment for Baxter Road was the question, and how's that going to be managed? There's kind of two parts to that answer. First of all, SBPF are looking at doing offshore sand mining, which requires investigating a permit for US Army Corps of Engineers. So that's the first major core of the answer, that they're looking at offshore. The second part, if Erica could possibly put it up on screen, is just to use a map to illustrate it. There is 5 reaches. This was all shown a couple of weeks ago by Dwight Dunk, but this image here kind of illustrates it nicely. There's 5 reaches. Reach 2 is currently where the geotubes are, the existing ones. Reaches 1 and 3 would get constructed first, so either end of the existing geotubes. Reach 4 wouldn't even be constructed until there was an adequate sand source, and the same for Reach 5. So you have to have the trigger of sand sourcing answered before you do certain amounts of construction. So it's kind of inbuilt into the study design that we need to have the sustainable sand source. That's the first one, and I can wait on questions on that one first before I get onto the NOI update.
It's an update.
Sure.
If the board has any questions, they can, but not for a long discussion.
Okay, so just to bring the board up to speed, it was discussed, 2 weeks ago or more, that the escrow amount of money had to be in place before the NOI could be submitted. The NOI and the escrow were both in place before the submission deadline, which is November 17th at 12 noon. Both were received before that. So we got the full amount. And just to kind of update everyone on how much money is available, the previous escrow amount was $150,000, and that's been in place since around 2013. And we wanted to bring that up to an adequate amount that would cover any removal costs. So we thought bring it up by $350,000 to $500,000. Now we have that in escrow, and we're good to undertake a removal if needed.
Thank you, Vince. Okay, is there any public comment tonight for items that are not on the agenda? For those online or here in the room? Okay.
Hi, Jason, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I had a couple follow-up questions regarding my
Please state
questions
your
from
name.
last week on this. Oh, sorry, it's Megan Perry.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. I was just curious, has anybody talked to any local fishermen about the potential sand source that you guys are looking at for this project, and what environmental impacts there are because of it? Because I'm not quite sure it is the most environmentally friendly way to source sand, or I guess maybe compared to some other bad environmental impacts, maybe it's better, but I'm a little confused about how it's the right choice to do. So my question would be, has anybody talked to any of the local fishermen about it? And is this truly the most environmentally friendly thing to do? Thank you.
Thank you. We go to the next one.
Jason, are you recognizing me? It's
Yes.
Deanne.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. We're appreciative of Megan bringing up the issue of sourcing sand for the expansion of the geotubes. And as far as we know, the whole issue of offshore dredging has never been discussed publicly. And we have a number of questions about that, about whether has there been a feasibility assessment in regard to dredging offshore as a sand source? How difficult is it to get the permit? What is the probability of successfully getting the permits? What about the quality of the material mined? There's a whole host of questions, and I don't know if it's appropriate right now for us to go through all of them. I mean, maybe what the request is, and Vince knows we've also asked for this to go on a crack agenda, is the whole question of sand sourcing and offshore dredging is a very complicated one. And to just say that SBPF, your partner, is going to seek offshore dredging is really incomplete and inadequate. So if we could please have a public discussion more in depth than in the context of public comment, I think we'd all find it very helpful.
Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
Any other comments tonight for items that are not on the agenda? Okay. There's no new business that I know of. Approval of minutes, warrants, and pending contracts. I get a motion for approval of the minutes, payroll warrants, and treasury warrants.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously. Approval of pending contracts. Any questions or anything you want to go over, Libby?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. That passes unanimously. Citizen Department Committee requests. We have resignation acceptances of 2 Council on Aging.
Can I just say one thing?
Sure.
I apologize to one of the people that resigned because they had sent it a couple of months ago, but it got lost in my inbox. So that's why it's getting to you so late.
Motion to accept and send letters of thanks. And then re-advertise.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 That passes unanimously. Okay, Valet Park of America, 2022 Summer Valet Service Update. We have Tim Graney here. Walk us through that. No?
Hello, everybody. Yep,
Yeah,
I'm
he's
here.
here. Yeah. Hey, Tim.
Hi, how are you? Excellent. So 2022, I did email the numbers over to Greg. Did all of you get those numbers?
Yes.
Okay, great. So very good year, all in all together. So totals for the year, our highest year ever was 2018. This year, the difference between 2018 and this year was 246 on the bag check. And as far as the 2022 season this year, we did 6,000. I'm sorry, I don't have my cheaters. 6,626 cars this year. Our highest year ever was 6,596, and that included the National Grid and the downtown valet stand that year. So all in all, a very good season. Worked very well with Stephen and his team over at National Grid. Had some challenges in the beginning of the year, moving around with equipment that he needed to move around, but nothing new. It seems to be an every year thing. We also extended the valet through the second week of September this year, and then did the third weekend as we've been doing. And those numbers, while they weren't great and kind of, they were almost at a break even. So, it didn't hurt us, didn't help us, but it did help some people that were looking for parking.
Thank you, Tim. Any questions, comments for Tim or Greg?
I'll just add in, Chair. First of all, hello, hi, Tim.
Right.
Yeah, Tim and National Grid, Valet Park and National Grid work very well together. So they've had a very successful season. We are, I just want to give a little background. You have the agenda item summary sheet before you. Kind of gives a history of our valet services since 2011 and why Valet Park, or Mass Park of America, doing business as Valet Park, has been our vendor of choice. National Grid actually puts Valet Park as the provider, the valet provider in the MOU with the town. So we've been very fortunate to be able to build upon this relationship with National Grid and Valet Park over almost 9 years now. So it's been 9 years that we've been with a couple of glitches. Don't forget 2019, we didn't get the lot. But overall, we've had a very successful operation. So that's why we do not bid out this service. We don't own the lot, and nor does the town actually provide valet services. This is a pass-through. The town makes no money. National Grid charges annually per their lease agreement, and Valet Park pays that fee. They pay the town pays National Grid. So that's how the operation has worked. And the reason I bring that all up is that through the efforts of Erica Mooney and town council, Matt Fair, it looks like we already have potentially an agreement to use the lot next year. It's the earliest ever. So Erica's been working on that with National Grid through their L1 project. So they're kind of using it as kind of like a sweetener in the deal to make sure that we can use the Kendall Street lot as well as the building for daily baggage storage. So thanks to Erica. It looks like if the board's interested in working with another MOU with National Grid and Valet Park, we will be able to offer the service again next summer. That's all I had.
Thank you, Greg. Any comments or questions? Don?
Oh, just absolutely, we're interested in continuing the service. It's really been great for the community.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Seems like the difference is it's the best year so far, but is it because you extended it for a couple weeks?
No, I would have to say actually during the peak of the season, we did some really great numbers. Worked closely with Stephen to move equipment around that in the past we've had to work around, and just to maximize that space. We did good job of also, accommodating overnight guests as well as a wide mix of business, different businesses and people coming into town to use the service. So, busy during the day, busy at night, which always helps to improve your numbers. Yeah, that extra week that we added, it didn't hurt things. I mean, it probably kicked us just up over that 2018 season, but it really just overall the island was busy. I've talked to Stephen about possibly working together also to try to continue to kind of maximize the space over there, working around the contractors that he has and the stuff he has going on and the staging of equipment, and also kind of work to make sure that we're making the best use of that space.
And last year, we were fortunate that National Grid extended the period to, I think, October 1st, that Mass Park could be using the property. So that was helpful.
Correct. And you know what else is something like early approvals like this, where in some of the years where we haven't been able to find out if we're going to be able to do it until May or sometimes even June, that hurts because a lot of people are trying to plan ahead for the season ahead. And if I can't tell them for certain that I'm going to be able to accommodate them, then they start looking elsewhere. Whereas, in this type of scenario where we can give them an answer even this fall, or, this winter and say, yeah, we're going to be able to help you for next year. It's crucial in setting up for that season and allowing people to plan ahead.
And Mr. Chair, I want to jump on that because I'm sure Erica's sweating bullets. The MOU with National Grid is not signed yet. We're still doing some negotiations for the L1 project, but this provision is in there. So fingers crossed that all works out soon. But it was nice that they even put it in there. It's great that Erica and Matt Fair from council even thought about putting it in.
Thank you. Brooke?
I'm curious, excuse me, are there any downtown employers that work with you for employee parking?
There are, so several, probably the biggest one is the High Line. The High Line, and what I've been able to do with them is also accommodate several shifts of their employees for parking. And also we've been able to do some of that on trade so that I can pay to get my employees back and forth at the beginning and start and end of the season, and then also support their business as well. And then they also help, obviously all these businesses impact each other on the island. So a good example of them helping support this cause is at the same time of that, they also advertise for all their passengers that the bag check is available, which makes, people's visit to the island a better one. And, people can extend their visit for the day they're leaving, even though they have to be out of their hotel at 11, they can spend the whole day there, check their bags with us, and then go on to whatever they want to do.
Dawn?
How many times did you have to turn people away? And do you know what days those were?
Okay. Yeah, there definitely were a few days, and the upward days, the rainy days. Anytime you see the numbers up in the hundreds, those are question marks, or there may be certain times where we are definitely having to say, we're full at the moment. So yes, any day where that you see here that's 100 or more.
Okay.
I don't have an exact, we try to open it back up as quickly as possible. But you're hitting those numbers. Those are days where your potential for shutting down.
Okay. Thanks.
Well, thank you. Sounds like it's going very well and you're ahead of schedule. So great job, everyone. Well done. Oh, yep. Sorry. There's one hand up. Sorry.
Hi, guys. Thanks so much. Victoria Ewing.
Hi there. Go ahead.
Happy belated Thanksgiving to everybody. I just wanted to check in on the Valet Park contract, I guess, so to speak. I've listened clearly to how you guys have explained, that Greg kindly explained the program goes and what's in process at the moment. We've been, I've had an interest party, with all due respect to, is it Mr. Greeny? I've had an interested party looking to facilitate applying through the RFP process for a couple years now. We've been keeping up with procurement, and I know through COVID and stuff, the program kind of changed. The last RFP was 2016 to 19, I believe. But I just wanted to follow up with, it sounds like that's not going to happen again, and get an explanation of how it worked that way back then and what has changed since, or what is kind of information regarding all of that.
I can take that, Mr. Chair, if you need me
Yes,
to.
please.
Hi, Victoria. The RFP or the IFB was only for the Broad Street operation, because we had to bid out for that because that was a public service on public property. So we did those. I think we actually ended up doing 3 over the life of Valet so far. The first year we had it was a pilot project. We did not bid it out. The second year, which I believe was in 2011, maybe 2012, we did bid out. Then we bid out subsequently to that. The National Grid Candle Street parking was never bid because it's designed in the memorandum of understanding with National Grid. And that goes back to, God, I'm sorry. Okay.
Sorry, when we were working with them to develop that property. We worked with them to help develop that property and design the parking lot. And the town. It was the town, us, and National Grid were, it was a project to help develop that land and turn it into parking.
Thank you. Victoria, does that clarify it for you?
Yes, that's great information. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Greg. Here's to a good 2023 season.
Fingers crossed.
Appreciate everybody's work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bye, Tim.
Bye, guys.
Okay, up next is Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee. A request for Select Board to jointly support the Conservation Commission request to Mass DEP regarding questions and requests about enforcement and access along the shoreline. Vincent, you have this one?
Yes, I do. This takes a little bit of explaining, and about the simplest way I can explain the letter, and I hope I'm not undersimplifying this, is that it's asking for property owners to be in compliance with their Mass DEP Chapter 91 lines before they come into the Conservation Commission. That's about the simplest way I could put it. So for context, this all started in August when the Conservation Commission generated a letter that was sent to Mass DEP asking much the same type question about compliance and other related type issues. Since around the end of August, beginning of September, the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee, through the Conservation Commission representative to that committee, have looked at doing a letter of support, and that's what's here now. As the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee is advisory to the Select Board, that is why they want the Select Board approval, effectively, want to be co-signatures on it, so that it can be sent to Mass DEP.
Sorry, quick question. Can you give me some examples? You don't have to use any particular organization's names, but what problem will this solve? What are the problems that Conservation Commission are bumping into by not having this compliance?
So I've kind of written up an example, and this is kind of super broad example.
Okay.
So say a coastal engineering structure, bulkhead, groin sticking out into the water. When it got constructed with the Chapter 91 license 20, 30 years ago, whatever it was, at the time when it was constructed, it was out of the water and in compliance. Now, due to erosion, sea level rise, and other factors like beach movement, that kind of stuff, it's now in the water for the sake of argument, and it impedes passage along the beach between the high and low water marks. And then the conditions have changed, so therefore it's in the water. And the question is it still in compliance with its Chapter 91 license? This is something that, for want of a better way of saying it, that CONCOM wants the state to answer. Not that the CONCOM wants to answer this themselves. This is a state question. Mm-hmm. So the CONCOM doesn't necessarily want to answer that question, and they want Mass DEP to rule on this type of issue about compliance before it comes into the Nantucket Conservation Commission. So this is all about being able to walk along the shoreline uninterrupted, and we have a number of locations on the North Shore, Dionys, Washing Pond, Cliffside, that kind of area where these are already becoming an issue. And this has been at a number of Conservation Commission meetings.
Okay, thank you. If it's okay with the board, I'll go to Ashley Harrisman. Yeah. Go ahead, Ashley.
Hi, thank you. I'm just here if you want any perspective from the CONCOM. I know when we originally sent this letter to DEP, it actually came before you guys, and Matt, I believe you were thankful that we wanted DEP to address some of these public access issues that are not under our jurisdiction. So that is, our perspective. And, CRAC is obviously requesting a similar. So thank you.
Matt?
Yeah, no, Ashley, this is one of my pet peeves. This is, sort of what we hear all the time is, well, there's nothing we can do. They're existing, et cetera. But then when we had someone from the state here, they said, oh, no, when you renew them, you can put stairs, you can do this, you can do that, you can force this to happen. So, CONCOM is, asked and not really gotten a lot of answers back. And I think, this will increasingly becomes an issue. Another question I have separately to town council, there's a chapter 176, section 4 of the Mass Act of 91. And that was a law that went in place. Maybe it's no longer there. That's why I'm asking. But that was more than fishing, fouling, and navigation. It allowed passage on Mass coasts between low and high tide. And it also allowed towns to fine if people were not allowing it. So if this stuff is actually, if it's still on the books and still there, and we're hearing that, something different, then we need to clarify it, because passage along the beach for more than fishing or fouling is a traditional use here, and is something that we should be, encouraging and embracing. And if in fact, if 176.4 still exists, then we would be viewing some of the incidences that we've had recently somewhat differently. We might be taking a position where we fine people for, stopping passage across the property, et cetera. So I think that, there's more, this is one of the important issues for the island. And I think, sending this letter is entirely appropriate. The Concom does have a difficult time on these. And if we can get a little bit more clarification from the state, and that the state knows that there's different parts of the island care about this, I think maybe it would be helpful.
Well, thank you, Matt. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Vince. It makes sense to me. Any other comments? Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. Thanks, everyone. Okay, we'll move on to a public hearing. Ken, are you taking us through this next one?
Yes, I am.
Okay, we'll open the public hearing to consider the taking of Hollister Road.
This is a fairly straightforward situation. I don't know if many of you are familiar with it, but Hollister Road is a very short road that only goes between a cut across and provides access to the houses on this property. The first half is paved, which is where the houses are, and the second half is unpaved. What we were concerned about in terms of bringing this forward was to make sure that once we took it, everybody would take this as an addition to their existing property, and there wouldn't be an ability to access. Fortunately, every single lot has other access to this property, and so that resolved the major question with respect to this. So the object of the exercise is for us to take it and then take it over to the Real Estate Assessment Committee and take a look at what we would be getting back in dollars in terms of the disposition of it to the abutters. And the term then would be that they would no longer exist, and the abutters would be able to attach this to their property. Also very clear that we've made to the abutters that property does not give them the right to subdivide the property any further unless they already had the right before obtaining this parcel. So this has been reviewed by council, has been reviewed by council for most of the abutters, and it is our recommendation that you approve the taking, execute the document.
Do you have any questions for Ken? It was kind of hard to hear you, Ken. I heard most of the first half. I think it's not an issue on your end. I think it's our volume in here. Don?
If no one has questions, I'd make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, just double check and make sure it's a public hearing. Don't see any hands. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. The public hearing is closed.
Make a motion to approve the takings.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, nice job, Don, remembering to make a motion to close the public hearing. We are on it. All right, we'll open the public hearing to determine the tax allocation by classification. It says here, request to be continued to December 7th, but I think, Brian, you were going to walk us through a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think actually we're going to have Rob Rainey, the assessor, walk you through. And I think we also, as we understand it, there's been a letter written to the board about the residential exemption. And I think Rob will kind of answer some of those questions that were in the letter and give people a better understanding of how that works.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Rob.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everybody. We are not quite ready for the tax classification hearing. We've run into a couple of delays with DOR and some of our reporting. So hopefully maybe by next week we'll be ready. If that's okay, we'd like to continue that.
Yes, I think
Motion to continue to December 7th.
Second.
So yeah, we'll be coming back with, some actual numbers and details regarding that, that you all can consider next week. As for the residential exemption.
really quick, Rob, we're just going to finish the motion to
Okay, go ahead.
move it,
Sorry.
and then you could keep addressing that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry, it's my fault. So the residential exemption, there was a editorial in the Nantucket Current a few weeks back that had some inaccuracies in it and some suppositions about how it works that were not quite right, that I would like to address, if that's okay.
Please go ahead.
Just as a reminder to everybody, the residential exemption is something that is not specific only to Nantucket. It is across the Commonwealth. It's a tax exemption that under Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 5C, allows residents who own and occupy their property for, as their primary residence to receive a tax exemption on their property that could be up to 35% of the average residential value in a town. We, in the last several years, have only gone to 25%. And what that means is the exemption amount for everybody is the same, regardless of your personal property value or your property value. It's calculated the same for everybody. So as properties get more valuable, the percentage of the exemption that is coming off of your tax is going down. So, if you're paying $20,000 a year in taxes and the exemption is only $2,000, that's a little bit different than somebody who's paying maybe $6,000 in property taxes and they're still getting the $2,000. So, it really benefits the lower valued properties. So in a community like Nantucket and even Barnstable, I talked to the assessor over there yesterday. It's designed to give the breaks to the year-round people who are, their properties are valued less than, say the seasonal residents whose properties are valued more. So it's a little confusing to sort of go off the cuff and say that, and for example, in this editorial, that property owners who are legitimately entitled to the exemption are wind up subsidizing those that are not. That's actually backwards. So it's the people that are not getting the exemption that are actually subsidizing the people that are. So the value of we had, so I'll give you some quick numbers. Last year, we had about 2,280 exemptions, which represented about $1.2 billion in value. And that 1.2 billion is absorbed by the rest of the people in the residential class who are not receiving the exemption. So really what's happening is the people that aren't getting it are the ones, the seasonal residents who are actually subsidizing, the year-round people who actually live here. So another issue that came up in the editorial is enforcement. Under state law, there is no requirement for somebody who has qualified for the exemption to reapply at all. And it is up to presumably the towns to monitor who's getting it, who's no longer eligible, who's moved away, that sort of thing. We try very hard to do that. We follow, obviously, when the property is sold and a new owner comes in, they would have to qualify themselves. The exemption does not stay with the property. It's a personal exemption. So, we're tracking all of that. We don't have a questionnaire or anything that we send out, but we're pretty good about knowing. I mean, my field assessor is out every day reviewing properties, looking at properties, and she has a pretty good idea of who's where and who. I mean, we can't go by at night and see if the lights are on, for example, but we're tracking this pretty close. We do have some exemptions where the tax bill is being mailed to an off-island address, which normally would not qualify you for the exemption, but there are circumstances where the tax bill is sent to, say, an accountant or somebody like that, but the taxpayer is actually residing on Nantucket as their primary residence. We can't accept people saying, "Oh, well, I'm a voter there." That's okay, and that's great, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you live on Nantucket, as your primary residence. The definition from the state is 183 days out of the year, so which is literally half of the year, or actually one little bit more than half of the year. So, it's a difficult thing to make sure that everybody is complying, but I think that the number of people that perhaps are not complying is very, very small. It's a tiny fraction of what we have. So what we're going to do in discussions with the finance director, I think what we're going to do is begin a program where we're going to send out new applications to existing recipients on a 2 or 3 year schedule, maybe even longer. It's a time consuming thing to send out these applications, process them, make sure that everyone's in compliance. There are deadlines, there are time periods where you can apply, where you can't apply. You have to have your income tax filings from the previous year, so that's another issue. But we think we can do something where we're actively renewing people's applications on a periodic basis, whereas that's actually not really happening at this point, although we are catching people as they sell, or the ownership changes, or some other reason which they no longer qualify for. So I just wanted to address some of those things and answer any questions that may have come up because of this editorial, and that's about all I have.
Thank you, Rob. Any questions?
Just a sort of comment is, I think people a lot of people don't realize that if you are, a year-round resident, 180 something days, you do have to go in and apply. People are always surprised when you say, "Oh no, it's just not automatic." You have to actually make an effort to do it. So that's number one. And I have a question for Rob. You said that the residential exemption value was $1 billion something. What's the other value of everything else?
Okay, you're putting me on the spot here.
I love doing that.
The total value for the residential class last year was about 24 billion-ish. I don't have the exact number in front of me. So you're looking at a very small percentage of the total that is being, that is either getting the benefit of this exemption or is actually paying for it for the people that are getting the benefit of it.
Yeah, that was the point I was going to make. It's 5% or so. It's a lot. It's small.
Rob, would you explain why it's not available to homes that are where ownership is in LLC? I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. So again, this goes back to the state rules. The DOR, the Department of Revenue, sets these rules. An LLC is considered to be a corporation and not a person. So this is a personal exemption. An LLC is an entity that owns the property. It's not a person that owns it. So the LLCs do not qualify. And so similarly with trusts, in order to qualify if your property is owned in trust, you have to not only be a trustee, but you also have to be a beneficiary. The idea there being that you have a significant enough interest in the ownership of the property to qualify you as an owner, which is one of the stipulations and to qualify. So you have to be an owner and you have to live there.
Thank you, Rob. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Brooke. Can we go to Rick Atherton? He has his hand up.
Jason, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Great, thanks. I sent an email to Jason earlier just to give them a heads up. And I think relevant to your discussion was a comment made at the short-term rental work group meeting recently on the 22nd of November. And I'll just read it. And I have no comment on whether this makes sense or is right or correct, but nevertheless, it's a public comment by a member of the Finance Committee. And I think that makes us all want to pay attention. So the comment was, you can't, and this is in reference to the residential exemption, you can't look at the people that get the tax break and use that for any sort of information because the town is investigating it right now. There's a lot of fraud, a lot of people claiming they live here year round and they don't. So that's the comment that was made, publicly disclosed. I think it's worthy. Rob seemed to be responsive to that. But I think you as a select board ought to acknowledge whether or not the town is investigating as stated by that comment at the short-term rental work group. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Rick. Rob, do you want to talk about that? Just a quick comment is, what does a lot mean? So when people make statements, nothing against the particular person who made it, but a lot, is that 1,000? Is it 2? So can you speak on that, Rob?
Yeah, a lot of this is word of mouth. So, when you live next door to somebody and you feel as if they're not there, as a year-round person, 183 days is shorter than you think. So, again, it's something where we are keeping an eye on it. We can't catch everybody, but I don't think that there are, my numbers don't show that there are that many people that are possibly, taking advantage of this. And, another point to make on that is the town is still receiving the same amount of tax revenue. It's just shifted, it's just spread out a little bit differently within the residential class. So it's not hurting, the town's tax receipts at all. It's just a matter of, fairness, I guess, but everyone else is paying for the exempted people. So it's a tough call.
It sounds like you're going to put other safeguards in place over this next year.
Yeah, we take this very personally because we don't, we spend a lot of time in the public eye taking a lot of heat for things like this, and it becomes personal. We don't want to make mistakes. We don't want to let anyone get away with anything that they shouldn't be. But there are some enforcement, I guess, quote unquote enforcement issues that are difficult to manage, but we're coming up with a plan to maybe do it a little bit better or a little bit more efficiently. And, maybe we'll catch people, maybe we won't. There's still, I don't know. That's pretty much all I have to say about that.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, I'll compliment him that he's looking at it. He's taken the question seriously and working on it.
My experience is there's been more people that should get it that don't know to go in and apply than the other way around. I think it's more people, and it's people who have been select board members and a couple years later still didn't have it and didn't realize. I had friends like that. So I think there's more people in that situation, at least what I've seen, than the other where they're cheating it.
And there's a little bit of a lapse too when you're a new property owner. There's a certain date that you have, threshold that you have to meet. But we continued this, so we might want to talk about anything else next week.
I have one more comment. Thank you. I was one of those, Matt. My first 2 or 3 years of owning a house, I had no idea.
Yeah.
So there's at least 3 years right there.
I was one as well.
Right.
Back in 2007.
Me too. So
Now that we're all confessing, I did this right away when I moved here year-round because it was also in Vermont where I lived,
Okay.
but we had to recertify every year in Vermont.
Yeah.
Well, just one quick comment. So if somebody moves to Florida, for example, and they try to get the exemption down there, the Florida assessor's office calls me and says, is this person receiving the exemption in Nantucket? And in some cases, I had this happen recently. We had taken the residential exemption off of a person's property, but he was still receiving the benefit on his tax bill because of the when the tax bills were printed. So he still didn't qualify in Florida, even though he was getting his thing. So, you know, the towns talk to each other on the application. It asks if you own property anywhere else. We check with those towns, you know, to see if they offer the exemption, if you're receiving it there, because you can't receive it in two places at once. So, I mean, there are a lot of safeguards in place, but we're looking at doing a few other things.
Great. Thank you, Rob. We'll continue this to December 7th next week. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Town managers report.
First off, we have a traffic safety work group recommendation relating to designating the west side of Mill Street between Prospect and Mill Hill Lane as no parking. Is Art on?
Yes.
Arcus Barrow, member of the work group. I think, Art, you're going to explain the recommendation for us, please?
I'd be happy to. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Thank you. So this is a matter that a citizen that resides on Mill Street brought forth to the traffic safety work group. And I see it more of a, I believe the work group also saw it more of a clarification issue. It's a fairly narrow road. Folks have traditionally parked along the east side. There was a situation where someone had parked on the west side during the summertime, and the car had to be ticketed and towed according to the correspondence that was filed with the work group. And the person was quite upset because the understandably that side of the road wasn't designated as no parking. So after review by the work group, our recommendation to the board is to help to clarify the matter, avoid such situations by designating that west side of the road as no parking.
Any questions, comments?
Yeah, I guess just one. So when you look at this, Art, you pick the side of the road with less driveways and less, you know, so more parking is on there. Is that, when I look at this online, that looks like what happened?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that was part of it, but also there's sort of vegetation along that west side that is right up close to the edge of the asphalt that is the traveled way. Whereas on the east side of the road, there's a bit of a sidewalk and area for parking. I mean, there's actually more driveways along that eastern side of the road where the parking would be allowed. But again, there's, I think, a greater space between the vegetation and the edge of the traveled way for parking to occur there. And if you were to have it on the west side, you're essentially just parking straight up the road.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. Thank you, Art.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have review of a proposed communications plan, and we have talked about this with you a couple of times. I've referenced it in more than one town manager monthly report. Most recently at your governance workshop in July, the topic of communications was discussed, and this topic has actually been brought up numerous times over the last several years. During COVID, it was brought up by a board member as to the possible engagement of professional assistance with getting our messaging out. And even prior to that, around, if Greg is still on, 2011, 2010, somewhere around there, he and I attended a Massachusetts municipal managers meeting at which pretty much the entire meeting was dedicated to communications, public outreach, and the need for towns to start looking at engaging additional resources to help get accurate messaging out. We have a variety of communications that we need to keep up with in order to get accurate information out to the community. 3 contracts earlier this month were executed with communications vendors. As you know, we, for example, Pierce Cote was one. They are a communications firm. Zen City is a community engagement firm. And we've decided, or have been discussing internally, that it'd be a good idea to develop an actual communications plan. We can put it online and begin to implement it so that we have much more centralized communications within the town. Some departments would still, minor things, they'll continue to do their own. But this is meant to tackle sort of the bigger things and the things that really require some focused outreach. So Florencia Rulo, our Public Outreach Director, is going to take you through a presentation she's been working on. Florencia?
Hi. Yeah, I don't know if we need to go through all the slides, but basically it's what kind of Libby said. It's just formalizing the work that we have been doing during these past 10 years since basically Jason started as a part-time in IT and then moved to town admin, and then I came on board. And it's trying to centralize the communication processes that we have in town, kind of unify how departments communicate with the public. And basically so far we've been doing it in an organic way or on demand as emergencies came up, and we're trying to just come up with a process, formalize the work that we do, and for that we need resources, and some of them are external resources. So we created a mission that I can read, or we can all read it. It's there on the screen. For those that don't have the presentation, it's now on the website under Town Administration Communications Office. And yes, we just last select board meeting, actually, you signed the contract for UserWay. Will be, it's a firm that we engaged. They will be doing an audit of our website just to make sure that it's ADA compliant. And then we're going to be working with a crisis management firm to assist us when emergencies occur. But also they will be providing training to our department heads and different people within the town to make sure that we are all on the same page when we communicate with the public, how we do it. And Sense City is the other firm that they will be helping us in creating web pages that allow us to engage more with the community. We understand that communication is a two-way process and we want our residents to be informed. So yes, these are some of the tools that we're going to be using within the communications office. That's basically it. I don't know if you have any questions. And we're, Brooke, you and I also met, we're going to be engaging a language service firm so we are looking to start providing over the phone interpretation for those that don't speak English as their first language, so they can call the town and receive services in their own language. And I'm a Spanish to English translator, English to Spanish, but I cannot do all that sometimes we need. So they're going to be helping us also with Portuguese and Bulgarian as we need. So hopefully we're looking to start doing it as soon as possible. So those are some of the tools that we're going to be using. And then communication, so it's very organic and it's growing all the time. Actually, 10 years ago and where we're at right now, it has worldwide has nothing to do, especially after COVID, how much it has grown. So yes, we're looking to keep moving forward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Brooke, did you have your hand?
Yeah, I'm curious, Florencia, the translation services, is it the
Linguistica, the one that we talked about?
Yeah.
We're looking, it might be that firm or different
But
one.
that kind of service, I'd like to clarify for the public.
Yes, basically when someone's going to be calling the town and the machine will give them the option of Spanish, Portuguese, Bulgarian, or any other language. And then they will be communicated to this third party that will assist them in their own language. They will call the town, someone from the town will, so this person is going to be interpreting over the phone. Right?
So it's live interpretation
Yes.
of the customer or
Correct.
community member's language needed in any department. So
Yes.
we don't have to have translators moving around from department to department. So you call the plus department and you have a question about how to apply for a building permit. And you speak Bulgarian, they will get a live interpreter who performs a three-way conversation about how to do a building permit.
That was my question. It was a
correct.
3-way call where they're all on the line together.
Exactly.
Yes.
So it's immediate response rather than asking a question in your language, someone figuring out how to get it translated and returning. It's on demand live interpreter services, which I'd like to say that is available to nonprofits in the community with a grant from the Community Foundation. It has been for a while. So Florence and I have spent some time talking about how to extend this to the town, and I'm delighted.
Yeah, that's going to be happening.
I assumed it was like Google Translate. I didn't think it was a live person.
No, it's an actual human being, and most of the firms provide services in many different languages. Not all, I mean, Spanish and Portuguese are the ones that we need the most here, but yes.
Give something now?
I was just wondering, for you or Libby, when you're getting outside help with this, when you look for outside contractors or experts, how often do you look inside the town, who we have locally? Because there's a lot of talent on this island. A lot of people, I'm sure, would give their time.
For these particular services,
Well, not necessarily.
in general, yes, we're planning on doing more PSA with NCTV, for example. I work with them a lot. Hopefully, we're going to be doing more now that we're going to have more resources, and marketing firms within Island. We can definitely work with them. So yes, these are the three most urgent needs that we had, but we're definitely going to start looking on Island before moving out deep. Sense City is a firm that works with many municipalities. We don't have that service here in particular. And then these firms are just resources that don't exist here. But yes, of course, we're looking to engage talent from on Island. Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What I really like is the training part, because everybody's really good at their specialized knowledge, whether it's in their department. But there's no communication experts within, right? If you're a department director, it's really, you didn't go to school for that, right? You weren't trained on that. So that kind of training, I think, would really help, whether it's crisis situations or just really dealing with the public and tough situations that aren't really crisis. So I think the training is going to be great for everybody.
It's important. I once went through training, and when I looked at the videotape of what I had said, I had admitted to a conspiracy. And that's not what I meant to say, but so you need that training.
I think there's another huge advantage as we try to integrate and be consistent across the system of municipal government around, and how different departments work is integrated, and that this communication, centralizing communications so that everybody's on the same page and the messaging is consistent for the various parts of things that come from multiple departments, and also just in terms of direction, strategic direction as a community. And certainly COVID taught us about emergency communications and how to ramp up for that on short notice.
Absolutely, yes. Yes, in a way, this is formalizing what we've been doing so far and having a more organized way of communicating and looking to increase and improve the way that we communicate to solidify transparency and to engage the community. Yeah.
Is any of this for sort of face-to-face public meetings? Is any of this, most of this seems to be digital and online and outreach. Is any of this for earmarked for direct kind of public meetings, informational sessions, et cetera, or is this trying to get away from that?
No, I don't think so. The word.
No, I'm not quite sure what you mean. We're not trying to get away from any public informational sessions. If anything, we might have more as a result of this. There might be more recommendations for them. I think we haven't had so many lately because of COVID.
Right. No, I understand that. I didn't see that in here. And I'm old school, and I look at a lot of this and I understand the need, and I understand the society. Everything seems to be moving faster. People want an answer immediately. There can be misinformation, misinformation can be out 10 times faster. It makes it very difficult to operate. But at the same time, I'm old, and I come from a time when it wasn't like that, and we don't advertise a lot, and it was I have a business that's word of mouth, and and this is all very, I look at that, and my employees will be like, oh, we'll do a website, we'll do this and that, and I'll go, go down and make sandwiches. We have a lot of bread to do today. So I worry sometimes that there's jobs you want to do, but jobs you have to do, and I want to make sure that, and I know we have to do this as a town, but it's sort of some part of it is, I wonder, anyway, some part of it is just so foreign to me. I have a difficult time with it. You know, I have to admit.
I don't think that we're planning on moving away from public presentations, but it is a fact that communication is moving fast. And I learned this year that the normal person spends almost 3 months a year looking at their phones. So that's not going away. And the communications offices, or the way that towns communicate throughout the country, it's kind of all over the place, but it's definitely moving forward and fast. So we want to be there.
My kids are spending probably 9 months a year on their phone. I think they fall asleep with it. It's
pretty scary.
It's crazy.
Since we're omitting everything in residential exemptions, do we want to omit how much time we spend on our phone per week? You get an update every week? No? Okay. Thank you, Florencia. This is really great work. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Just thought everybody was being really honest tonight. So let's see. Yeah, thank you, Libby.
Would we be able to consider that sort of an endorsement of our communications plan?
Yes, very much.
Okay, we're not looking for a vote, but just, okay, thank you. Okay, continued preliminary review of town-sponsored warrant articles for 2023 annual town meeting. I have some updates, not too much, from your prior meeting on November 16th. In your packet is preliminary outline number 4. And I'm just going to point out what's changed, or a little bit of updating from the last time we talked about this. So as you know, there's ongoing discussion about short-term rental articles, whether they are zoning or general bylaw, still occurring. The micro mobility devices on multi-use paths, I did have a discussion with town council today, and I think we heard at the last meeting that he was looking into whether or not we could adopt regulations for these items, and the answer is yes. So he and I will be discussing that. Short-term rentals we talked about. He has proceeded to get me, even though I kind of already had it, the fertilizer ban article that you all talked about, which was a motion that wasn't adopted last year in the citizen warrant article. There are a couple of things that involve the land bank and the real estate section that actually have already been authorized, so we don't need to take those up. We discovered the need for an easement for National Grid in connection with their L1 project, and that's that triangle parcel at Wilkes Square. And planning has given us some revisions to their preliminary list of zoning and other articles, and it is in your I don't know if we got it to you today or not, but Eric is going to put it on the screen, and then Leslie or Andrew is going to take us through.
Hi, Leslie Snell. So the preliminary draft that we all have reviewed at several meetings is effectively the same as what you've reviewed in the past. Some articles at the staff level, we've decided not to move forward with for various reasons. We've added a few that were just left off prior drafts. We also added information that you all asked for several years ago to be included with our draft, which is what is the operational or financial impacts to the town. So we've included that. At the last town meeting and prior town meetings, we included a technical amendments article that usually included various concepts. The Attorney General asked that we discontinue that practice, so we will have more articles than usual because of that this year. I will point out that the Planning Board has not voted on a final slate of articles yet. These are all concepts that we're working on, but we don't expect them all to move forward. And all the changes are shown in red and in strikeout from prior versions.
Any questions for Leslie? Comments?
Okay. Is now the appropriate time to clarify our timeline on short-term rental articles?
I think it would be.
Based on our discussion at our strategic planning session. So I would say that I would propose that we commit to a special town meeting in the fall to consider both zoning and regulatory bylaw related to short-term rental based on the outcome of the short-term rental work group to give them time to collect and analyze the data they need to make a good and thorough recommendation to the community around how we should handle short-term rentals moving forward. I think in conjunction with that, it would be very important to me that we message to the community that we do not support any short-term rental related articles that appear on the warrant at Springtown meeting in support of allowing this process to play out for a special meeting in the fall.
Done?
I second that.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I missed that discussion.
Yeah,
I was
you
late
can.
the other day, so this is news to me, so.
Well, we talked about it 2 or 3 meetings ago that we all agreed that we should give them more time. I think that was when Stacy, the facilitator, was on. But then it wasn't really, maybe.
There was still some confusion out there.
Yeah.
There still exists some confusion in the community. So my point tonight is to clarify 100%. And I muddied the water talking about the regulatory framework. And I have since revised my thinking on this, that it should all be tasked to the short-term rental work group to look at all the tools, zoning and regulatory, and come with a recommendation that we would put on a warrant for special.
Okay.
It's become very clear that they don't yet have the necessary data, and it's December tomorrow. So until they have the proper toolkit, how can they make any kind of a recommendation?
Well, I will support it, but I'm not happy to support it because I think it's inexcusable that we still don't have data after this number of months. And being late for your homework is not always acceptable, but I will reluctantly support this.
So I'd like to comment that the availability of data is not as simple as it might appear, as it turns out, as it's attempted to be being gathered. And that the registration process starting in January was designed to flesh out the situation here. It's disappointing to me that we're not ready for Springtown meeting. And it's more important to me that we do it right.
Dave?
Hi, thank you, Dave Iverson. Yeah, just a quick thing about the data. It is forthcoming. I think it's important to understand that it's coming from many sources. So it's there's some negotiation involved. And I think we're on a really good track right now. We're hoping to have it in full by February. So we appreciate your patience and the community's patience, but it is important that we do it right. So I think a fall town meeting is a better choice. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave. Any other comments? I'm in agreement with a fall town meeting, giving time, doing it right. I agree with you, Malcolm, as well. Matt?
Yeah, I agree with the fall town meeting as well. So,
okay,
and having a chance to actually put numbers to things and would be great.
Do you want to make that a vote, or is consensus fine?
To me, a consensus is fine.
Okay.
Yeah, and so are we committing to recommending against any articles at town meeting completely?
That's what Brooke suggested. I'm for that.
Okay.
I am as well.
Okay.
Well, we can recommend, but we can't stop.
Can't stop it, but we can.
We can't stop them, and we can't stop people from putting them forward on a special town meeting
No.
if they get the right number of citizens.
True.
And so we may have others that are added, but at least if we're committed to saying, please don't vote on any of this, that would be great.
And on town meeting floor in May, we should know a lot more than we know now. Right. So we can say, look, here's where we're at. Here's how close we are. Here's what's happening. Here's why. We'll have more information we have now to stand up on town meeting floor and say that. Dawn?
I have another item, if we're done with that.
Are we done with this? Not on this. Okay, then we go ahead.
We talked about municipal facilities and bringing that back yesterday as well. I guess one question I have is, are we ready to go forward with that? Or do we want to slate that for fall town meeting if we're committing to it and be able to prepare?
It is going to take some preparation. So why don't we tentatively put that on for the fall?
I think it makes sense because I think in capital committee, we haven't really dug in to that because I think I remember even saying capital committee, it's probably not going to be on this spring town meeting, even though we did talk about it, looking at the next 2 or 3, 4 years. We know what's out there. So I think the fall maybe would help.
Okay.
Another Capcom member shaking their head.
Yeah, I think the fall might even end up being too soon because as we learned with this building, there's a lot of, once you decide what you want to do, there's still a lot of public relations, a lot of the communication that I was just making fun of. There's a lot of that to put in place in order to be successful. And I think so.
Well, kind of the start of that being communicated happened yesterday with not a lot of people watching, but for a recap, we talked about how much money is going to be poured into some existing buildings that really should not be planned to stay there to keep them going. And the more we do that, then it's, oh, well, we just put all this money into that. Now we can't take that down to put up a new building, which is really what ultimately needs to happen. And it continues it spirals.
Brooke?
Yeah, I'd like to reiterate what Don said or reinforce what Don said is this has to be on a timeline, as rapid a timeline as possible, with a really convincing rationale, with real numbers for the community to understand that we have leaking windows in buildings that if we were to build a municipal facility would no longer be used for municipal offices. And we're pouring money into, we're making investments in buildings that don't warrant the investment, and delaying this really costs us money that we could be applying to the cost of a new building instead.
The other warrant we should think about is a charter commission warrant, because a lot of discussion. We have warrants coming up about revising town government. And apparently to really do that, we need a charter commission. And if the people proposing these warrants propose a charter commission, they need something like 2,000 registered voters to sign for it. But my understanding is the select board can form that own warrant. And it would, if we had that such a warrant on this next meeting, it could be implemented or not implemented depending upon the mood of the community about whether we need to reform government. Otherwise, I can just see this going on and on and on.
Are you more in favor of the charter there versus the special act? There was advantages, disadvantages of both ways.
I think we should seriously, if we have the warrant, we don't necessarily have to use it. But if we have it in place, it will save us an awful lot of time.
How does everybody feel about that?
Well, if ATM supports the creation of a charter commission, does it give us the option to do it, or is it a requirement to do it? I would need to understand that.
I would need to understand it too. I'm just trying to save years of continuing discussion.
Okay. I am not clear of the distinction between doing it as a home rule, I think it versus special act home rule petition versus a charter. And certainly I'm respectful of the conversation that's happening in the community and the desire to address this. I have the same desire personally to look at it closely and figure out where we're going. I just don't want to commit us down one of the two paths if it's not the best path for the community.
I'm just afraid by the time we figure it out, it's going to be another year, and then another year, and so forth. I mean, I essentially, it would be discussing put ourselves out of work.
Dawn,
That's funny that you said that, because in our strategic planning yesterday, the first question she asked us was, what does this board want to be known for? And one of the things I did think of was, well, we could be known for putting ourselves out of work. But I would think that the Charter Commission would appropriately pair with one of the citizens articles if it were to pass. But maybe could we get an opinion from council on that?
Yeah, we need some counsel, because I did have comments today from people with one of those articles are concerned that their article effectively is illegal. So if that is the case, we need to prepare for that appropriately. I think we need to ask council.
Yeah, Libby?
I was just going to say, why don't we add this as a specific article discussion next week and make sure we have town council here?
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yes, we can look at, because town council hasn't weighed in on the citizen warrant articles yet. Usually he goes through. So when he looks at those two articles, see if they're legal or not, really, maybe we already have this on paper, special act versus the Charter Commission, advantages, disadvantages, and how they, all four of those things work together. Can we go to Deanne? Sorry, Deanne, I didn't see your hand up.
Thank you, Jason. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I just want to go back to the discussion on the short-term rental issue and your agreement to put it off to a fall town meeting, which I can understand. Is there any way, though, that you could address the concerns of many of the citizens and perhaps put a moratorium on the formation of short-term rentals, additional short-term rentals in the interim?
I think we could discuss that. I think that would be maybe going ahead of the STR work group and putting something in place. And I think the board wants to wait for their suggestion, but I'm not. It's just my guess.
I think we do not have to accept whatever the short-term rental work group recommends. So I would think that would be doing it now. It'd just make it too confusing.
Yeah, Deanne was asking, like, putting something in place now.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
It would be, it would just make it more confusing.
Yeah.
Communities that have done this, Dan, have become even, we're very polarized. A couple communities I've written about that have done this became even more polarized. And then the whole fight was to get rid of the moratorium. And so we'd be, we'd put it in place, and then people would be fighting to take it away and wouldn't be listening to any of the other. So that's sort of what I've read about, but.
Thank you, Matt. Brooke?
I would say that to put a moratorium would be to take a position before the work group has done its work.
Yeah.
And I'm not prepared to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good discussion item. Deanne has her hand back up. I think she had to tell Rick that she was on. Now her hand's down. Okay. All right. Anything else on? Oh, now it's up. Now it's down. All right, we're gonna move on.
She's just teasing you, Jason.
Mm-hmm. Was there anything else? Any other items we want to put on? No. Just making sure. Libby, was there anything else?
No, just to reiterate that I am getting the town council, I think, may have sent me today the review of the citizen warrant articles, but I wasn't able to get to it. So that'll get out very shortly. And we'll do this again next week with focus on the Charter Commission issues. And next week's the 7th. You'll probably do this again either the 14th or the, also next week. I am hoping that as a result of your discussion at your strategic planning workshop yesterday, that the short-term rental work group facilitator will give an update on the work group's progress at next week's meeting and once a month thereafter.
Yep. here Wednesday night, coming in and giving an update. Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
sorry.
Yeah, we did discuss doing every 2 weeks. We thought that was maybe a little bit too much for Wednesday nights.
The monthly town management report, just wanted to review this with you. It is in your packet and on the screen. I won't review every single thing, but just some highlighted items. With regard to the 2022 annual town meeting, we have some active items. I believe that either today or sometime this week, the Attorney General or maybe it's tomorrow or next week. I don't recall the exact date. Very shortly now, the Attorney General will have a final disposition on Article 71, which is the only outstanding bylaw at this point. That's the topless beach article. The short-term rental registration program, as laid out in Article 39 and subsequently contained in regulations adopted by the Select Board and Board of Health, is underway. And I'm told we might have to consider adjusting the January 1, 2023 implementation date, because there was a lot to get underway between the end of town meeting and now, given everything else that's going on. But we're working on doing that. And there is a rather significant outreach plan coming forward on it. Prep is underway, as you can see, for the 2023 annual town meeting. Prep for the 2024 budget is well underway, and we are preparing our general fund recommendations for your December 14th meeting. Baxter Road long-term planning is well underway, and Vince and I attended our monthly Baxter Road alternative access planning meeting this afternoon. The erosion control project, in a separate agenda item where you already had a little bit of an update about the notice of intent. Did you already do that? I already forgot. Did you do it earlier? Thank you. So you had a little bit of an update about that, the notice of intent that was submitted to the Conservation Commission a couple of weeks ago by the Coastal Resilience Coordinator. Nantucket Sewer is in progress to recommend putting Nantucket on hold and refocusing on the Somerset Needs area. Somewhere in my email, I have a memorandum from Weston and Sampson that will get at the refocus issue, and we'll bring it before the board shortly thereafter. The new marijuana law is, which relates to host community benefit agreements and host and community impact payments, is underway with review. We need to get together what our cost in the impact of the facilities on the community in terms of costs, and that is proving to be a little bit complicated, but we're trying to get at that. Solid waste long-term planning. We have an internal group that contains a select board member and a FinCom member, and we are actively meeting on a monthly basis to get at solid waste planning, and we have reported out to you a number of times on that. Funding is in place for a solid waste manager. However, we have not been able to hire that, to fill that position so far. It's proving to be a little challenging to fill. The recycling coordinator position is also vacant. And we're working on making updates to our solid waste long-term planning web page and getting some corrections out for recently publicized inaccurate information about solid waste activities. Strategic plan, as you know, you had your strategic planning workshop yesterday afternoon, and we'll be updating the plan as a result. PFAS townwide risk assessment is ongoing and active, and the water main extension project that we mentioned earlier, where there's a public forum next week, is actively underway. The hire of a new sustainability program manager is happened, and that is going to be filled with Mr. Murphy. Congratulations, Vince, but don't fear, he'll stay in the Coastal Resiliency Coordinator position for a little longer until we can get that dealt with. The water infrastructure improvement fund versus the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund. You've had some discussion about this kind of recently, and Town Council is working on a matrix to show the items that I have listed here, how the fee is assessed, approval process, et cetera. So that will be coming back before you sometime soon. DEP is having a series of public hearings. This week and next on Title V regulation changes. I reported out on this over the summer. We met with DEP. I believe we were the second community to meet with them about what impact those changes could have on Nantucket. And we're still they asked us to give them a lot of information that we were trying to make it our position that there are some items that we already comply with in the new regulations that have not been completely adopted yet. And so we're waiting to hear back from them on that. We have a lot of stormwater and drainage issues and a series of activities associated with addressing those things. A lot of personnel issues. They're all listed out there, the classification and compensation study, succession planning. Collective bargaining negotiations is about to take over quite a bit of time, continuing work on recruitment and retention strategies and employee onboarding. Project management, we are in dire need of project management resources. We are utilizing some consultants and engineers for that purpose right now for certain projects. But we do have a project manager position that we have established that we're advertising for now. A number of pretty large projects underway, including what's listed up on the screen: Island Home and Senior Center, the water main extension and the associated transportation improvements, central fleet management. Our DEI assessment has been completed, and now we're working on elements of the DEI strategic plan. It's not a big project, but this group that's transformed itself into something called ACPWP, which means Public Works Partnership, started out as a summer program that I worked with a local seasonal resident on and the idea was to get some special needs people who are, willing to help the town with areas where we need help, like trash pickup in the summer. They were very, very successful this summer in doing that activity. There was some supervision provided by the town, the land council, parents, and others. And it was, I think, deemed so successful that they'd actually like to expand it a bit to other areas. So we're just involved in the discussion and maybe contributing some funding to a coordinator through a grant that could help to provide supervision and oversight, as well as seasonal employee funding for things like the trash pickup. The communications plan is another kind of largest project, which you heard about tonight. Public records requests, I just wanted to mention this. Our records access officer, which thankfully is a position we were able to fund a few years ago, is very, very busy. We had actually hoped that that position would be able to take on some other activities relating to committee management and associated initiatives, and there is a lot of time spent on public records requests. So far this year, over 500 public records requests have been processed. Housing, large focus on housing. We're still trying to work at our $1 million town employee housing assistance pilot program, as we discussed yesterday, and working on a plan for how the town maintains and manages its own rental properties and the properties it rents. And that is a synopsis of what we're working on. Happy to answer any questions.
Libby, on the last, on the maintaining and managing properties, has there been any discussion of paying a percentage to Housing Nantucket or some other group that already does it? So we're not duplicating efforts?
We have talked about that.
Yeah,
Yes.
Is there any interest?
Well, I would say we're still exploring it.
Okay.
Anything else?
My comment and sort of main comment yesterday, and my comment on looking at this, is that the town needs to it needs to find housing. It needs to build housing that any of us would want to live in. We need to do something, or we are not going to have a town. We wouldn't want to have town staff any longer. It's, 20 years ago, no one would believe it. Some of us have been living this reality for many years, and that I think everyone thought it would never happen to the town. I think it's happening to the town, and it is severely impacting our ability to, to operate efficiently and to do all the things that are expected to be done, and even more is expected to be done now. because of the internet and everything else in the world. And so I think that that has to, we talked about this yesterday. I think that has to become a huge priority, so.
Yeah, for you, you said it was, I think somebody said it was priority 1, 2, and 3, and there's everything else.
Yeah, that's because you get, I've been saying this for a few years. We won't get anything else done if there's no one here to do it. And there's no one qualified to do it, and they don't stay long enough to do it. You get a project manager and he's here for half of a project and he's gone, and and they can't start the other 3 projects that people are asking to have, that we all want done and the public wants done. So I think we really, it is a huge issue. And I don't think that the public, I think people know it kind of, but I don't think they understand the real impact it's having. That's my 2 cents.
Brooke?
I think the figure that stunned me at our meeting was the 32% loss of town employees.
It was turnover. I don't know if that was
turnover. Well,
yeah,
turnover in town. Yes, so
It was-
turnover. So, but turnover means hiring and training, loss of institutional knowledge. It's costly both in dollars and in productivity and in customer experience and in the ability to meet the needs that people expect of us. And I think of us as a municipal government. And yes, housing is an important part. There have been some structural changes in the labor market that probably have contributed to that, but housing clearly is the #1 contributor to turnover in the private sector and the public sector right now. So I agree. And we have some opportunities, and we need to fast track pursuing them.
I just wanted to ask about a different item. 500 public records requests. Can you elaborate a little bit, like the nature of those and how that compares to years past? Because that seems really excessive. And just wondering what we can do to not have to have a position completely dedicated to that.
While Libby looks through that, I just want to know, because I work in the office with Maureen, I mean, some of these public records requests, she can be having to look through thousands of emails for one request. And it takes time to put your eyeballs on all of them.
I'm sure.
Just as an example, and there are individuals who make numerous requests, not that they can't, they most certainly can. It's all totally allowed. It just takes some time. One person has requested, for example, all communication between SBPF, the select board, and the town manager from January 2021 to the present. All communication among plus HTC, select board, and town administration related to HTC advisory committees. All communication related to SBPF, several other individuals, and town administration. All communications relating to Surfside Crossing between various town officials and individuals. All information between the Affordable Housing Trust plus town administration and other individuals from January 2021 to the present.
Quick question on the second one. I think to me that was one of the most broad ones. How do you query that? How do you search for that?
Well, there are a number of search words that we use, and sometimes the individual needs to be told that their request has to be narrowed down.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we physically can't go through 10,000 emails, and a lot of them are duplicative. So, for example, it's I sent you an email, you responded, and then somebody else responded to that. So it's a thread that contains the same thing over and over. So that has to be sort of sorted out, or not. I mean, we try our best to be as transparent as possible and put out as much information as we can on the website for people to find themselves, so that we don't necessarily have to provide a records request. But if somebody asks for one, then it needs to be responded to. We have had a number of comments that our website contains more information than the websites of many municipalities.
So I want to share an experience I had with someone who texted me and said, how do I do a FOIA request? And I responded and I said, what do you want to know? And it was a really simple question that didn't need a FOIA request. And I want to remind the public that the FOIA request is sort of the last resort to when you are finding that you can't find information about something. But the amount of information that's available on our website with meeting minutes, YouTube videos, people with an email that you can just send an email and ask them a question and get a question answered. I think there's this idea that the FOIA is the court of first order. And I said to this person, why don't you email these 3 people and ask? And if you're not getting the information that you're looking for, let me know and I'll help you follow up. And they were like, oh, okay. And I explained what a FOIA does in terms of the demand on staff time and how difficult and time consuming it is. And at times I think people there are other ways to get the same information without using this right that is absolutely a public right, but it's not necessarily your first course of action to find out what's going on in the town. And I think now that we've done a communications contract and we're going to be doing more public outreach, I think helping people understand how to find stuff on our website is going to be really important too. So.
Thank you, Brooke. Dawn?
And my one other question was, how does the 500 compare to like the last few years? Do you know?
I didn't.
You can answer that next week.
Yeah, I didn't bring that with me, but yes, I could get that.
It may be a right, but it's also, something can be, quote unquote, be the law and be right, but it also can be, what's the word? It can be abusive. It can be it can be abusive. It can be, sort of not the right thing to do. It can be the right, you can ask, but some of it, I think, sort of, and I go back, I won't name anyone now, but go back to Mayor Mann. I don't know, I might be too old bringing him up, but he used to have, and he was always looking to catch somebody in something wrong at the school. And every request was digging to try to find something wrong to show how everyone was doing things wrong. And ended up wasting all their time on gotcha games that could have been much better spent in productive manners. And so I think, I think some of that, my theory back then was put everything into a Mayor Mann, what do they call it, file cabinet, and give them 2 weeks and then move it where it belongs. Because some of this had got to be ridiculous. And I think people think that now that we have email and it can, you can just search, it's so easy to do. But I've seen a couple of the requests and it's not so simple. And I don't even think everything's really always in it. Because you'll be reading it, like I've seen some of these and you're reading it and you go, oh, where's the answer to that? Oh, then you go a couple more pages, where's that? So I don't even know that they're 100% complete. And I'm not saying we did anything wrong. I think it's just so much work and so hard. I don't think it's as simple as pushing a button and printing everything. And, I've been subject to it a couple of times and I've done it 100%. I've gone through all my emails and printed everything off and brought it in. This would happen to us early SBPF days. And, I find I was just shocked at how, it is a lot of work. And that was just me going through my stuff. And I think the person asking wasn't even really trying to target me. So, maybe they were, but so anyway, long story short, I think that it is a right, but it should be used judiciously. And if you're trying to, and it shouldn't be used to be playing gotcha. And if it has to be used to be playing gotcha, then we have a bigger issue, on our hands, which at times I think maybe we do. But, if it is being used that way, then, then don't be passive aggressive about it. Come right out and say it. Here's my proof. Here's what I think's happening. I think some of this is trying to make those points, find things in here that, and make those points. I don't know.
Anything else? Is that it, Louis? Okay. Select Board reports comments. We have the Conservation Commission request for special counsel in connection with SPF, Town Nantucket NOI, notice of intent application for the erosion control project. We were sent a letter request. I'm trying to find that date. And Ashley Arisman is here to speak on it if she would like, or if we have any questions for her. This is to enable the commission to receive continuing independent legal advice during the forthcoming SPPF town proceedings. And Vince is here if we need him for anything as well. Any thoughts on this? Sorry, go back to Zoom. Ashley, did you want to open with anything?
Sure. Thank you, Jason. Our request has come in essentially twice. It came in through a joint application kind of process through you guys, and then a second letter sent from me more recently. Historically, we've always had council representation really available with all matters, but something as complex as SBPF, we generally have had counsel even available at the live meetings. And given the fact that the select board is a joint applicant, that does not allow us to use town council because there is a direct conflict of interest there. And we are hoping you would approve us special counsel so that we make sure our orders are correct and that, again, we're advised properly throughout this hearing process. So thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. And Mr. Carlson's here as well. Any thoughts? Dawn?
So in the past, council was present for every NOI hearing in regard to SBPF.
They were present for the majority of them. I'm not sure the exact number. Jeff might have a better idea of that. But they have been available to us throughout those hearings as long as I've been on the commission. And I know that was the process before I became a conservation commissioner.
Jeff, do you want to weigh in?
Sure. Thank you. I would say in general during the SPPF hearings from kind of 2012 or 2013 to current, town council has been made available as on an as needed basis. I would say in general, and I apologize for not having the exact figure. I would say anywhere from I would say at least half, probably 3/4 of the meetings involving SPPF, council was present or available. A lot of them were probably over the phone via remote participation, but they've been pretty readily available for about the last 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Well, special counsel was, and this will be kind of a question, was approved with based on an estimate from Mr. Timon, right? And we've paid, I think it was $10,000. What is the status of that? Was the work done all in regards to the hearing, all in regards to that? And, I don't know that. That's why I'm asking, and is sort of, that was, and are we doing this as a new, has that fully been paid? Was the terms of that followed? Was that fully paid? Because I've heard different reports that it wasn't, or that is a bill still due? And then, what is the status? So that's question number one.
Matt, is that a question for me?
Or for Libby, or for anyone who knows the status of it, that,
We start with Libby.
Yeah.
I can just say that I would have to find out the status of any outstanding bills. I'm not aware of any, but that doesn't mean there aren't any. The litigation, as far as I'm given to understand, is over. So the purpose for which the special counsel was initially approved is no longer active.
Right, because I think one of the things that I think we've been trying to do is to support the Concom and the negotiations. Vince has spent some very difficult and long time, a lot of time and difficulty, sort of putting in place, successful discussions, getting the northern end included, getting, making sure we have the money for the removal, et cetera. Like this isn't us, we have not been, as a board and as an administration, we have not been, for SBPF and against the Concom. The town has been attempting to facilitate both of those, both situations. And so my hope is that we have, that we are now, once the operations, et cetera, is heard, I'm hoping that we will find ourselves, on the same side as the Concom. That is my hope all along. And I hope, so I guess a question for Ashley, when will the first aspects of the operations, et cetera, be heard? Has that been scheduled yet?
So the operations, we've heard part of the operations last winter, but we start hearing the notice of intent tomorrow. And even if you feel like the town has worked really hard to produce something that you think could pass through the Conservation Commission, we still are a regulatory commission that needs an independent lens. And that's why we require that independent counsel. We have 2 agenda items on tomorrow regarding SBPF. One is their new notice of intent, and the second is an agenda item discussing, status of the enforcement removal, which could include, discussions of other things that have been submitted.
No, can I ask?
Yeah.
During the normal hearing process for an NOI, I mean, my understanding is that you would have staff advisement and engineering advisement and more technical advisement. And then if a legal question were to come up, then it would be requested to get an answer from counsel, because the town's not planning to have counsel at those NOI hearings. And I don't know if SBPF is planning to have counsel representing. It seems to start it off in an adversarial way that feels a little bit uncomfortable when everyone's been trying to come to something that everyone can accept and allow the Concom to do their actual, look at the regulations and the science of it and see if there's something that they can craft that could be approvable. And if not, if something needs to be defended, or if there's a real specific legal question, then it would make me a little bit more comfortable if there was more specificity in the reason for why there would need to be counsel advice.
Can
Does that make sense?
Yep, go ahead.
So one, it just gives us an equal playing field. You guys have town council available to you at all times. We would have no counsel especially available to us, and it would produce a major delay if we did have a legal question and then had to go through the request process. Again, you guys have KP Law, SBPF has Stephen Cohen and different counsel available to them in the Boston area. And you also mentioned, Dawn, crafting something that's approvable. Historically, council has reviewed any draft orders, sets of conditions and findings that we would produce for a complex hearing like SBPF. So by not allowing us representation at the get-go, it would most likely produce major delays. And again, it puts us on an unequal footing for this matter.
One of the difficulties that I see, Ashley, is one of the points that Libby is responsible for, if we can't just willy-nilly call up town council, any of us. We go through Libby and Erica, and they're the gatekeepers. I look at this, we specifically asked for, for a estimate on, on the legal matter, and we had specific parameters because we were not, we didn't want to provide a blank check. And I think that's what we're sort of trying to avoid here. And we also I don't want to start out adversarially. I think what we're trying to do is find a way that we are, on the same page and on the same team and can actually use the same counsel and not paying for things twice. So anyway, that's how I look at it. I'm kind of simplistic, I think, but how do we get to that point? And I'm hoping that, the operations and the other things will be heard, and we'll know if, there's a lot of good stuff in there that, some that's not in your guys' purview that, we've taken, to heart and listened to. And I hope that, I would hope that we would find that if that was heard, that we would end up on the same page. I would also hope that there would be an extension. I would hope there'd be an extension on the removal order so that there's time to hear the operations and maintenance issues. So, and if it would be disappointing to, hire an attorney to start battling on that topic when we haven't heard the first things. So, so I guess what I'm asking, what is the intent of the Concom right now? What are you guys hoping, what are you hoping to do with the things that are in front of you?
Well, Matt, we're hoping to have a fair playing field when it comes to this application, as again, there's a clear conflict of interest. We, same as you, have to go through Libby to get town council answers on NOIs. Through this hearing process, that would not be possible for us to use town council because of this conflict of interest. We keep talking about starting off at an adversarial position. The commission has requested in a 7-0 vote to have counsel available to us. There's no worse way to start off by you guys denying us that request. It is kind of the only way I can put it there. The intention is not to start off on a bad foot, but it's to give us the support that we know that we require given the complexities of this notice of intent. And as someone who's been through now a few different ideas from Sconset Bluff, one major round of a notice of intent, it's really important that we have that legal backing. And that's why we've requested it. The intention is not to start off in a negative light, but again, to give us equal ground here. And our last council was capped at $10,000. You guys as well this time could do something like that. It's not a blank check that we're requesting here, but counsel to be available to us for the notice of intent process. Thank you.
I have a question. Are you talking about having the council available at the meeting? I mean, the select board or the town, does not have a council at the meeting. So if you want to say that we're going to be fair and equal, then you should not have a council at your meeting.
So, again, historically, this is what we have been granted. If you guys want to go down the path of not giving us that support, I guess that's your prerogative. We have never had SBPF show up without counsel. I think it's important for your regulatory board to have legal counsel available, given the complexities here. Maybe not at every meeting, but I would bet that there will be legal questions that come up from commissioners right from the get-go. And I think it would be, again, wise to allow us representation for those rather than delay.
Who's presenting this to your commission?
So I believe Dwight Dunk is listed, but that could be Vince Murphy included. There are numerous entities that generally speak on behalf of SBPF, and now you also have the town partnership there. So that is a great question for, I guess, more your team as you're one of the joint applicants.
Right, because if the town's not going to provide a counsel for Mr. Murphy, and you want equal footing, maybe no one has a counsel.
So I guess our perspective is that you guys have probably had counsel review some of the documents ahead of time. Maybe I'm wrong on that. We, again, have had no counsel available and won't if you don't allow us special counsel.
What is what is staff recommendation? What is Jeff saying? What is, Vince? What do you, what is your recommendation? How should we handle this?
While Vince is coming down, this is definitely a policy issue, but I would just point out.
Libby, you say that all the tough ones.
Well, I'm not wrong. Typically, I mean, as we've already noted, there's no legal issue pending here. So I guess, the board would have to determine what legal issues need to be addressed. I don't think we've had much legal review of the NOI at all. It's very technical. That technical applications don't typically require counsel for most parties, specifically the town. It would be unusual to provide special counsel for a notice of intent like this. And I think are some concerns as to what the exact need for special counsel is, since litigation is over and it's a technical application. So I just provide that. Vince, do you want to add to it?
Just to say that essentially Libby's right. I have no counsel and I haven't needed it, and there has been no review by town council. The only advice that I'm getting is from Arcadis, from Kate Edwards primarily, among others from Arcadis. But to also answer one of Ashley's questions, the team that will be at tomorrow night's Conservation Commission meeting, where we will put it together, it does include legal representation from SBPF side, but I haven't really worked with them too much. They've been present at meetings, they've advised SBPF, they've been in front of me and privately without me, but my primary advisor has always been Arcadis on this topic.
Thank you, Vince.
Does Jeff want to, what do you think, Jeff? What's the right way to go? How, compared to how this has gone historically, what should we be doing?
I mean, I'll just say in a historical context, the commission has never issued a decision on this matter without legal review. Obviously, it's typically been George, again, kind of from 2012, where my involvement kind of started, to present. I think the difficulties with this, and not to take sides per se, but I think one of the difficulties with this matter is it's obviously they're never short, right? There's always lots of hearings involved and discussions and things that are there. I think there's a real benefit to, having someone kind of engaged from the start, just so they can even follow along and be up to speed on all of the discussions, what's gone on, the information presented. Because I think something that will slow us down ultimately is if someone gets engaged at the very end, even town council, that there's a definite delay possibility in any decision or closing a hearing to wait for that review to occur to get someone up to speed. From a staff level, that's always my concern. I mean, I know I've always worked with George very well as we've moved through these historically. But again, I think I'm concerned about that delay and, and getting questions addressed as they come up as they need to. Because again, historically, the SPPF applications have always had
questions that have been addressed and opinions that have been rendered regarding those. And I would anticipate that this one would probably be similar.
Jason, yeah.
Yeah.
So Jeff, what I'm trying to think this through, and strategically, I would see if the Concom said tomorrow night or a month from now, removal is necessary, no ifs, ands, and buts, then I would say, yeah, we would be at loggerheads. Or if they said, oh, we're not hearing, we refuse to comment or hear, say anything about operations and maintenance, I would agree. We're at loggerheads, and and there would probably be, something would happen. But if those happen and we're on the same page, couldn't we be, utilizing the same lawyers? Couldn't we have the same counsel? And if that's the case, shouldn't we do those things first? I'm just spitballing. I'm trying to think of how to do this efficiently and do it fairly so everybody feels that they're covered.
Ashley?
I guess, part of my concern, and Vince kind of stated it, you guys have representation as joint applicants through SBPF's counsel as well, even if town council isn't advising you. So that's where this joint application becomes a little more complicated. And again, with the conflict of interest, I think it's really important that we have counsel right away, as Jeff has said. So thank you.
I asked the question to Jeff though too, but so we'll ask it again in a minute.
I just want to point out that the SBPF council does not represent the town.
Yes.
No, right.
He represents the interests of SBPF, and town council represents the interests of the town. They're not the same thing.
And that's what I'm trying to get the interest of the town to be the Concom and the select board, because, and we've been trying to, to find a path. I've been trying to find a path that we may not all love, but that we can accept. And some of the things that are, sort of being said or being written, such as we can just, give up the road and everyone will pay for it and everyone will be happy and, it can happen tomorrow. That's just unrealistic thinking. And so what we're trying to negotiate within, we negotiate and make a fair path within the, within the parameters that we find ourselves. And I would hope that I think that path should be good we should find one that works for the Concom and works for the town and, and be able to be on the same page. And maybe I've been naive about this, but.
If I may continue his comments, it seems starting off with two lawyers on each side of the fence is right away, no, it's just not acceptable. I'm very concerned that we can't sit down anymore in this country or anywhere without having a lawyer next to you. All the people involved, the Concom, the town should just sit down and talk about this. And if it comes to a legal issue, then we'll get a lawyer. But I came in here thinking I was going to support this. Now I'm not quite so sure.
I always have concerns with some of these issues just eating up endless legal dollars that could be being spent on things like fire trucks. I feel like that most of the Concom members, at least except for maybe some of the new members, are so well versed in this entire project. They have Vince, they have Jeff. I would feel a little bit more comfortable if it's getting counsel at the point of writing the decision, or what if there's a list of specific legal questions that we can kind of craft an actual dollar figure to, rather than making it a blanket availability for someone to sit through probably what will be very numerous hearings. And it does become a slippery slope of, if the town's applying to it on an HDC application that might be contentious, at that point, is HDC going to be asking us for legal counsel or any other I'm much more comfortable, I was much more comfortable with the independent legal counsel when there was an actual legal matter to defend, not at the start of an NOI hearing.
We're assuming there's going to
And-
be a legal matter already. It's not, no.
I'd be, maybe after the hearing tomorrow night, there's numerous legal questions and then this comes back, or maybe, I don't know if Libby would be comfortable with some kind of an authorization where, just like with town council, it has to go to her to discuss whether it's approvable to
No,
get
no.
counsel on it.
You didn't hear this
She
was
doesn't want me
policy?
to do that.
No, come on, Libby
It's
gets,
a policy
Libby gets,
decision.
her whole life is grief. We don't need to give her more. So,
So I also am concerned with a blanket scope, a blanket authorization with no really detailed scope about what matters are approved for advice. And while I understand Jeff's comment about someone being up to speed, you know, and not being brought in at the last minute, I would be more comfortable along the lines of what Don, if there's specific legal matters, questions that are about crafting decisions, or, I mean, I'm the least knowledgeable maybe among all of us about this, the history of this, right? But, you know, I have some concerns about some signaling that was made about applications for expansion and not making them. And I feel like I'm loath to authorize the potential for litigation in advance, as opposed to advice on the making sure that the technical decisions conform legally to a decision. So I guess I would be more inclined to let's bring it back after the specific questions or the scope of those questions, so I can understand better the limitations of what an authorization would need, so that we don't sort of move too fast into the potential for litigation, as opposed to the analysis of the application in front of them and making sure that their response to it is drafted in a legally appropriate way. And I don't know how to to define the scope of that until I know more what kind of questions we're talking about.
Ashley?
So I guess part of the difficulty in defining the scope here, like by a specific question when it comes up, some of these questions might not be able to be asked directly through Libby if they're a legal question with the town as a co-applicant, with the conflict of interest that would be evident there. Again, we're not doing this to start off on like a litigating foot. This has just historically been the support required with an application that's this in-depth. There are lots of legal questions that come up, both about applying standards to our local bylaw and the state act. You know, so I guess I'm slightly disappointed that the commission's 7-0 request isn't seeming like maybe it's going to go through favorably. But this is very important for progress to be made. And I think all of the commissioners felt that way. We're not looking for a blanket amount. Again, we didn't request a dollar amount with our last request for special counsel. The town came back with $10,000. So if you guys feel comfortable capping it at a certain amount for the time being, I think that would be worthwhile. But again, I really do feel that the commission requires and deserves special counsel here.
Thank you, Ashley. Well, I think we're using the same thing. I'm trying to say it like, Ashley, you know, we've not sat in your seat for years dealing with this. matter. Like you and I have talked on the phone, and it's not been an easy road. And I think what I'm hearing you saying, Ashley, is, well, if we don't have this, then it's if we go down the path of not allowing counsel, then there's going to be a problem, and there's going to be conflict, and we're trying, and I think on our side we're saying the same thing. We don't want to have special counsel because we don't want there to be conflict. We want to be on the same team. So I feel like we're saying the same thing, but the outcomes are different. Right. Is there a way to allow counsel, if it's not now, if it's in the weeks to come, with certain parameters that makes us be on the same team?
I'm trying to figure that out. Because that ideally that, and again, I think it comes down to myself. I think it comes down to a couple of the decision points that are gonna happen soon. Sort of, is the removal, in fines, et cetera, going to begin? If that's the path we're going down, then we should know that, and we would act one way, and the Concom may act another way, But that, it sort of depends. What are the thoughts on the operation and maintenance? Have we made any improvements? Is there things that could be added to that? I think some of those that have been out there for a while, if I knew the answers to those, I'd feel a little more comfortable, and feel like we were going on we were rowing the boat in the same direction. I'm a little worried, I'm worried about having dueling lawyers. If you have a hammer, it sees everything as a nail. If you have two lawyers, what do you think they're going to see? They're going to see a bunch of nails. So I think I'm worried that that's what we'll end up with. And so I'm trying to find a way strategically for both us and the Concom to, sort of figure it out before we start that process. And it's hard to do Ashley, it's hard to do on a Wednesday night. It's hard to talk about these things somewhat elliptically in front of a camera and in front of the public, but that's what we have to do, and that's what you guys have to do. But I'm trying to think what is it that would work for both of us going forward until it doesn't.
I feel like it would be more comfortable for the Concom during their first hearing or first couple of hearings to flesh out a little bit more what the new legal questions might be in regard to this matter that they would need advisement on. And I mean, I completely understand that at the point of a decision, they'll need review of that. But I would also think that the current counsel that they used for the litigation is already pretty well versed in this subject and doesn't need to sit through every hearing at however many hundreds of dollars an hour that is. But also I would be more comfortable asking SPPF to not have counsel present, going like the other direction, saying nobody should have counsel there. I mean, obviously any counsel at any point can watch tapes, but it just seems like it would be a more comfortable environment if all of the representation is qualified staff members and engineers, and really start it without dueling lawyers, like Matt said.
That may not be a bad suggestion, that one may not be a bad suggestion, Don, because anyway.
It's a great suggestion. I'm not sure. It would only be a suggestion, unfortunately.
Brooke?
I'm just trying to, I mean, this is a complex matter with a lot of history that includes litigation. And I think for me, I'm very empathetic and understanding about the need for technical legal advice. Is this request for both sort of the operations piece, or is it just for the new NOI?
Yeah, or is it for past issues?
Right.
Yeah, that's a good question.
So I don't know what you're referring to by past issues. This would be for anything relating to the upcoming partnership between SVPF and the town. So the notice of intent, if you're including the operations and management under the guise of the notice of intent, that would be part of this request.
So I'm just not as knowledgeable about all of this and how it works. So I'm trying to like learn on the fly here a little bit. I mean, to me, I understand there is a conflict with town council because we are applying. The town is a co-applicant on this NOI, and if there is a historic use of counsel during the evaluation process of an NOI, I don't want to leave Concom without that resource, but I also want to be respectful of where we've been in all of this and how we're trying to change the course of all of this away from conflictual to collaborative as much as possible. And that is the debate that's happening in my head right now. Is how to signal our support to Concom for their process. And I think, to me, that's about defining what is allowable, what work by a special town council is allowable under anything we agree. And I think, to Dawn's point, if the first meeting happens and we see, the tenor of it, where it's going, et cetera, and what the legal questions that are raised, that we could, I would have a better understanding of how to limit the scope appropriately to meet the Concom's needs that have been historically met by town council in the process.
Here's another way to think about that is this, if we don't, if there isn't counsel, is it automatically, is this going to become the topic? If we don't provide it, is it the topic? So in what you said, you weren't sure about what I meant about the past, Ashley. I'm thinking, is this to litigate removal, or is this to review, do you need a legal review of the operations and maintenance, or some other topic that, is that what this is about, or is it strictly the NOI?
So this request is for, and I don't have the letter directly in front of me, but I believe it's for the NOI and the upcoming partnership. We have special counsel, as far as the removal and the enforcement, we were allowed Ben Timon for that legal process and ensuring that it plays through. So that piece is separate from our request here, as far as that's concerned.
In the letter, it says special municipal counsel Timon to enable commission to receive continuing independent legal advice during forthcoming SVBF town proceedings. So it's not specific to the NOI or anything specific. It doesn't mean that we can't put that in there if we need to. So we're not getting letters about things that are outside the NOI.
Yeah.
Or is that?
Well, I'm just thinking about this. I just know how contentious this is, how polarized it is. And I know how anything we do is going to be, sort of portrayed and represented. And so it really, it's a difficult situation for all of us. I mean, and I'm just having a hard time struggling with it.
When you
Vince,
say
can
all
you
of
help
us,
me? We all are.
You say all of us, you mean everybody, Concom.
Oh, Concom,
us.
yeah, everybody,
Yeah.
Concom and us. It's not, this is a very difficult thing. And some of these things have been blown, sort of not blown out of proportion, but some things are being represented in a way that I don't think was ever the intent from either side. And it's just been some politicized. It just, I was hoping we would have been take the temperature down a bit. I'd hope we had by now.
That's.
I just want to explain some of what the procedure will hopefully be tomorrow night at the Conservation Commission. We're going to hopefully the commission will open the hearing on this tomorrow, And then we're basically going to discuss one or 2 points. The main one is scheduling, where we're going to try and request that the commission put it to the off weeks and then start the hearings from hopefully the 8th of December, Thursday week on. And then I imagine it'll probably take, I'm guessing, Ashley might have a better idea on this, 2 to 3 months to go through most of the hearings. It'll probably take 2-3 nights to do the presentation. So that's probably 2 to 3 weeks, 2 in December, 1 in January, maybe 1 in December, 2 in January, I don't know, to get through the main presentation and questions to get the NOI presented. And then it'll be hearings, questions backwards and forwards after that. So there's a couple of months in this, I would think, probably 2 to 3 at a guess, real guess, I don't know. So just Matt's asking for help. I'm just going to spitball an idea, just an idea. If the proceedings proper start on Thursday the 8th, as is hoped, then maybe go, I don't know, month to month, have a small dollar fee worked per month and then reviewed by select board each month as a suggestion, just to kind of get the ball rolling, understand if there are legal questions first, and if there aren't, no more legal counsel, and if there are, continue with legal counsel, but they have to prove it.
Vince, so the first hearing or so, you're just going to be presenting.
Oh, tomorrow night is just scheduling. We just want to work out the schedule to put it to the off weeks. So the traditionally the SBPF hearings aren't heard as part of regular CONCOM hearings like all the other NOIs. They're put to off weeks where they don't meet.
Right.
So there would be maybe 1 or 2 Thursdays in December, and again probably 2 in January and February, where they would be available to meet potentially as the commission
And then
chooses.
and once those start, you're just going to be presenting?
Yeah, and there's
asking questions back and forth.
So there'll be presentations. The commission will have opportunities to ask questions while we're presenting, I think. And then once the presentations are finished, then there'll be the discussions and the considerations backwards and forwards. There's a lot to it. I imagine there's maybe Ashley could give a better idea of how she thinks it might work time-wise with such a large NOI, but I would think in the order of maybe 2 to 3 months, probably.
I'm not hearing a reason for legal counsel yet.
I do, sorry to answer Vince's question. It probably would take at least 2 to 3 months to review this. We also have our independent reviewer look at the documents, which presents a delay. Again, Dawn mentioned in a statement a few minutes ago, like CONCOM being comfortable with this. We asked 7-0 in a vote for this council. So that is really what we want, to be comfortable with this process, to ensure that it does go through in 2 to 3 months. This NOI and kind of an extension of the removal is all predicated on certain deadlines, and delays that might come up because we don't have access to council questions might be delays that push this process over deadlines that you don't want to be pushed past. So I do really want to implore you guys to allow us legal counsel. I think it is best for all parties involved to make sure this goes through smoothly. I do not think it will sit well with commissioners to start off hearing this notice of intent, knowing that we have not gotten the support we requested, in this situation. So I want to kind of be as clear as I can about that in making this request. And again, thank you for the consideration.
Well, I'll just say, I think we all support you. I think I haven't had a good argument of why you need the legal counsel right now. At some point you may, but I haven't heard the reason why you need it now in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is we're risking not getting any good conversation going if we don't allow special counsel. I don't say it's a threat, but what I'm hearing is if you're doing this, you're starting off with exactly what you don't want.
That upsets me because it is, I don't want to use the word threat, Maybe there's another word for it, but it feels like we're being forced to do it. Not as a request, but if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. That's not the way to start. This is not the way to start.
I haven't heard anyone say no. I've heard everyone say we need a lot more detail as to when, why, how much.
I mean, how much, what's the reason? Yeah, what's the intent of this?
What's the real reason? And it sounds like from what Vince said, nothing's happening tomorrow night. And it's probably going to take until the end of January to just even get through the presentation where the legal questions might arise. So it just seems like there is some time here to flesh out the when, where, why, how much kind of thing. So my suggestion from the tenor of the board would be that we table this for more information. I don't know if table is the right word, but extend
But here's
request.
The question I have, I keep going back though, we have a deadline with, a removal order, an existing removal order.
But they have counsel for that.
I understand. And so, but what is the intent on that? That's how many days away? A week away? 3-4 days away? So what is Concom intent on that? Because that, if the intent is removal and we are, if we are opposed to removal, then we are at loggerheads and and then we have, that's a situation we are clearly could be at, so I would feel a lot better if that were not hanging over our heads. I would feel a lot better if I had heard, about the operations and maintenance and whether what has been proposed is sufficient or whether it could be improved. I would feel a lot better if and I feel like the letter that we received from Concom was somewhat like, well, if you don't do this, we won't do that. And it reminded me of what SBPF did. And they lost their hearing because of, they were conditioning. And I felt like the letter that Mr. Timon sent was inappropriate and was conditioning things. And so I'm really stuck. And I'd feel better if I knew what what the intent, Ashley, if you could help me here, what is the intent on on the removal? What is the intent on some of those other issues?
So Matt, the removal is up for discussion, or progress there is up for discussion last night. Our request for special counsel on upcoming proceedings actually came with us allowing an extension of the removal deadline. So that was one of the conditions we asked for, was that you guys grant us special counsel to represent us on these issues, and we would extend that removal deadline. So we are trying to work with you guys the best we can. And, we're not just going to say, oh yeah, nothing happened in the last year and a half. We have a removal order from a judge. And again, that allowed us to take in more information from you guys. And part of our request in allowing you to present more information and have an extension of that removal was to grant us special counsel. So I do think, and I don't want to sound threatening, that was not my intention earlier, but I do think not granting us that special counsel will trigger aspects of these deadlines that we don't want right now, or you don't want right now if you want everybody to work together. So, that was something that the commission really stands behind. I can't really go into specifics about the legal questions we would need to ask counsel, because this is a public forum. You guys are a co-applicant. So that, puts me in a troubling situation. But just, again, historically, there have been numerous legal questions that have come up through this process. And by granting us counsel from the get-go, it gives us that confidence that you actually are working with us, that allows us to extend deadlines versus saying, nope, the removal is going to stick, because clearly we're not getting the give with the take. So I hope that clearly explains it.
If I can follow up on that, the tying of the extension of the removal to the granting of, how are those two things tied together other than a strategic withholding of something to get something?
I am not going to go into our discussions of how we produced our letter. Everybody does a little strategizing here, and the commission wants to make sure that our regulations are upheld and that we don't get steamrolled. So that's what we're doing in this process, is making sure we have the legal representation to ensure that our regulations are upheld in a, you know, in an appropriate manner. And I hate to sound frustrated at this point, but I don't think we're overreaching in this ask, and the commission is really trying to work with SBPF and you guys as the co-applicant here to make progress. And all of the commissioners agreed that having council representation is necessary for us to make that progress.
Did you have a follow-up?
Just a follow-up. So just to be clear, there's really no need for legal counsel with regard to the extension of the removal order. It's
approved. So
I'm sorry, let me clarify. The need for this particular legal counsel is not related to a decision about the extension of the removal order.
No, anything relating to the enforcement and removal order from Judge Gilday is covered under the previous, and I'm not gonna have the wording in front of me, but like endorsement for Ben Timon.
Okay.
So this would not be extra monies to go towards that process.
Okay, thanks.
When you all voted to draft the letter, obviously I did not see the meeting. Was it not a public meeting?
We drafted the letter in executive session as it
Under what provision for executive session?
So I don't have the document in front of me, Dawn, but it was in regards.
Jeff could probably answer that. It's not in regard to litigation.
So it was certainly in regard to upholding litigation that had taken place.
No, that's already been approved.
I can actually answer this. The letter that was drafted and authorized by the commission was a result of a discussion during an open session of the CONCOM at their meeting 3 weeks ago. Sorry, I can get the exact date for you for that.
But it sounds like maybe the bulk of the discussion was actually done during an executive session, which is a violation.
No, this letter was discussed and this request came as an open session discussion at the last hearing. The previous correspondence from Mr. Timon related directly to the request for the extension of the removal order. That initial letter with the initial request for special counsel was part of executive session related to the upholding of the enforcement order. The secondary letter from the commission was an open session discussion.
Okay, so we can watch that.
Yeah, I think you're talking about the first letter, and that's the one I was referencing, which I felt was reminiscent of SBPF.
I mean, what was just said is that it couldn't be talked about how this request came about because it was an executive session, which is not appropriately in executive session. It's not a litigation matter.
I'm sorry, I was confused with which letter you were referring to there.
Right.
I'm not getting a good feeling about this process in any way. And I want more information on the necessity of what council's needed for.
So it's clear to me that the meeting this week is scheduling the following meetings for several weeks or for several meetings are presentation, and that the actual sort of hearing back and forth won't begin for a number of weeks, if I'm getting this correct, Vince. So I don't feel pressure to decide this tonight, and I certainly want to watch the meeting from which this letter was produced. I'm curious.
What was the date of that meeting?
And I feel not well enough informed tonight to make a decision on this. And I don't feel a pressing need to finalize it tonight. And Ashley, I want to be clear that I want to do the right thing to help Concom get through this process. That is important to me. So I don't want my request for more time to to signal a negative response to this, but I feel like I need more information before I can make the right decision for the entire community, which is the job I'm tasked with.
The meeting, Malcolm, in response to your question, was November 10th.
Thank you. Sorry, my apologies for that.
Vince?
Just to clarify, yes, tomorrow night is procedural for scheduling. That's the main part when we're in relation to the NOI. There is also a segment on tomorrow night's Conservation Commission agenda for discussion of the removal order. That's also on the agenda tomorrow night. And so that everyone knows, the removal deadline is Monday, December 5th. So that's upcoming.
But do I understand that has been delayed? The removal has been delayed. Is that? Oh, I
No.
misunderstood then. Okay.
Yeah, it's still a discussion that Conservation Commission have to have tomorrow night.
All right.
Jeff, do you have your hand up? You're muted.
Sorry, I lowered my hand and didn't hit unmute. Sorry about that, guys. I think as someone a little bit like Vince here, who we're, kind of stuck in the middle, I think to me, it sounds like we're at a point where you guys are looking for information. I think that's information that is probably available and may, flesh itself out to some degree. Obviously, I think the questions that come up are obviously going to change over time, and will come up over time. I mean, I think historically speaking, obviously not every issue gets out on the table in the first hearing or even the second or third or fourth, depending where it's there for something that's this involved and complex. I know the first kind of big ticket item here outside of scheduling is dealing with the removal order, but I think it makes some sense to me to maybe, I don't know if table is the right word or continue the discussion, but I think rounding out a list of questions that may come up from even that initial review that can get back to the board itself for greater consideration is probably feasible to do in pretty short order and can come out of a regular open session discussion to the Concom. And I think that, obviously if we schedule tomorrow and then move forward to the 8th or whatever the first date that's possible schedule wise is, and have that list, I think you guys can have another discussion about what those issues may be and try to move forward collectively. Because I think, it's something that Vince and I talk about a lot here is, I think we're all in the situation where we are trying to create a situation where all parties involved can at least move forward in a productive manner. We may agree to disagree ultimately, but I think moving forward in a process that is cordial and productive and makes steps in a positive direction, I think is important. But I think that the question that you guys have can be answered relatively quickly, and then an ongoing dialogue between the groups for what those questions may continue to be, I think will be important as well.
Thank you, Jeff. I saw a couple people kind of nodding their head as you were speaking. So I think on the 7th might be too fast, but the 14th, it seems like we're all heading in the direction. This is just my take on it. To authorize special counsel, need to know a little more specific, and that'll happen. I'm not saying that'll happen. That's my take. Matt.
Yeah, but what questions are we asking? Like sometimes this gets bounced back. It's so no offense, Libby, but it's policy. And then it's, we say, tell us what you're going to do. And we get back, well, you've got to give us your questions and we'll decide whether we answer them or not. Like, I'm trying to understand what is it that
What do you want to know?
What is it that they want to, sort of, anyway, in direct. So in mine tonight, we're, are we going to be fighting about removal in a week? That's a pretty big question. Is that going to, are we going to be talking about removal while an NOI is going on? Is the maintenance and operation not going to be heard? Are the good things that we've done, like tonight, that we started tonight with sand, and the goal of the sand, and it's as though we've done something wrong by wanting to find a sand source. The sand source, when I sit on crack, and everything we hear for code 2, for everywhere, is sand, sand, sand. And the town doesn't have the staff and the ability right now to figure out all the questions. There are solid questions that Megan and Dan asked tonight, but the town doesn't have the, capacity at this point to put someone on that. So coming out of that work group, which Ashley and I were on, sand was a big topic. And so we said, well, let's use the resources and the horsepower that SBPF has and condition some of this. Condition sand and make sure the town is able to get sand at cost if it's found. All the questions that were asked tonight, those will all have to be answered in the process. The state is going to have specific rules, and maybe it's impossible and nothing will happen. But the idea, though, that these things get turned around to be portrayed as we're doing something wrong. And what we're trying to do is get the trucks off the road. The zillion trucks that everyone complains about. Find a compatible sand source. Find a good way to store it, a good way to bring it, and find an available sand source for all the other sand we're going to need. We're going to need it in Nantucket. We're going to need it, in a lot of other places. And so this was a good thing that SBF agreed with. They didn't do it, like it wasn't easy. They are really pushing hard. They really want to, they're really pushing hard to do some of this. Vince has had to do a lot of convincing. And so I think, that's just one example of, and somehow it can get portrayed as we were trying to do something bad for the environment. And it's the complete opposite. We want to have piles of sand from the right place in the right grains without impacting other things. Maybe I'm being naive, but that was the goal. And that's coming from, and some of it is not in sand's not in Concom's purview. They can say how the grain size and everything else, but they can't tell you how you bring it there, and they can't tell you where to get it and that type of thing. So some of this we are already working with Concom and trying to solve some of their issues. They've had public hearings where all they've had is people complaining about the numbers of trucks, and it'll be X amount more trucks, and it's so many million cubic feet of sand. That's what they spent hours and hours, and I feel for them, sitting through this. They spent hours and hours with people bringing spreadsheets and talking about what a terrible thing it is, on the roads. And so we try to find a better way, and that's a terrible thing. So somehow there has to be a path that will work. Somehow there has to be a good path, and maybe this goes away, and whatever happens there happens. But then we're still going to be stuck looking for sand for all these other things. We want to use natural solutions. It requires, unfortunately, those require a lot of sand. And so that's just one topic of many. So I'm leaning toward, I don't know what the questions are that we, fully need answered. I'm leaning toward, supporting them in some manner at some point. But I think we have to really be kind of sure, we need to make sure we end up on the same page,
Don?
I mean, I just want to reiterate that this is not a no. I completely feel for the process that they have to go through. I know how long and numerous the hearings have been throughout the years on this project. But I mean, we're definitely trying to make a very massive effort to come to some kind of resolution on this issue, and as setting some kind of precedent for things going forward with all of the coastal resiliency projects that are going to be coming forth on the island, and trying to figure out ways to not be adversarial with property owners and work collaboratively and get benefits from the property owners that can help the entire community. So, I mean, I think it's reasonable to continue this for a couple of weeks and just try to flesh out a little bit more information on what really needs a legal review as opposed to a technical review. And then, you know, just have a little bit clearer parameter on what kind of support is required. Is that fair?
I agree with that, Don.
So how are we going to get that answer? Who's doing it? When are they doing it? You know, how are they doing it?
It's going to have to come from Jeff, right? And Vince?
That's
Yep.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think we have to make this complicated. You know, we all seem to want to make everything complicated. We don't know what the legal questions are yet, so we'll see what they are, period.
Are we determining what those questions are? Or, you know, they're asking us to give them questions. Are we asking them?
No, the questions are
Maybe
going
I
to
don't understand it.
The questions are going to come up in the discussion if there's a legal question. In the technical questions, I'm not going to review technical questions. We have experts review the technical questions. And I think we're going in the right direction right now. Let's just not complicate what we say we're going to do.
Yeah.
Let's see what comes our way.
I liked the way Don said it. I don't think we need to know the specific legal questions. We need to know the parameters, and we can know those in a couple of weeks. That way, the council can advise them whatever legal questions that they have. We just need to have more parameters. I'm trying to simplify it.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, these legal questions are going to be in a public hearing.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, anything else? Ashley?
I just wanted to say thank you for the discussion and your consideration here. I appreciate all of your points of view.
Ashley, thank you for being here tonight. You were, one person from the commission talking to all five of us. I know that's not easy, so I really do recognize that and appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Vince.
And you didn't get frustrated. You did really well.
We probably need to vote to continue it, right?
Do you want to vote?
Do we need to?
Libby, do we need to vote on that?
It's not a public hearing.
Yeah. Bring it back on the 14th. You and I will cover it. Okay. Any committee reports or select board comments?
No.
No?
I think I had one, but it's gone.
Next
It'll come
week.
back next week.
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes.
Good job as always, man. Very well spoken. Have a good night. You too.